Where will Shohei Ohtani be 1 week from today as the winter meetings open up? And will he sign? We'll break that down and have more on free agency and what players are available in trade in this week's edition of Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast.
This is Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast with your hosts, Brandon Spinner and Michael Burnes.
Well, hello and welcome. I am Brandon. That is Michael on the top right of your screen. And below me is Wes. And you are listening to Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast. We're here in the off season, just a couple of days away from the winter meetings. And this is when things start to get juicy, fellas. We've already had a few signings so far, and we'll dive into that here in just a second. But the big news over the last couple of days and over the last couple of weeks has been the Japanese market. Not just Shohei Ohtani, but the other pitchers on the market. So let's jump right into that. First off, how are y'all doing? And what do we think about these Japanese pitchers?
Doing all right. The Japanese pitchers, I'm more excited to see where Yamamoto goes after he just won his third MVP in a row. He's the one I'm watching more than Ishikawa. Is that how you say his name?
Iwagama.
So yeah.
I don't remember. I'm doing great, by the way. It's been a while. Love you guys. Glad to be back.
Happy Thanksgiving, by the way.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. Still working it off. We're probably going to go work out tomorrow just to be sure the last bits of Thanksgiving dinner are worn off. I don't remember the last time we had this many high-profile Japanese players come over in one offseason. Do you guys?
When Uwakara.
Yeah.
Fuji?
Iwakama. Yeah.
There was Iwahara, I believe the closer who pitched for the Cubs at one point, but also the Red Sox. Did he come over with Iwakawa the same year?
I think so. And that was after Yu Darvish, though, right? Or was that around the same time?
Didn't go Daisuke, Yu Darvish, and then Iwagama? Yeah. And then we had some Shohei guy come over as well. But yeah, I think this is probably the strongest contingent of Japanese-born players coming over. And ironically, it all lines up with the biggest free agent in MLB history, most likely, in Shohei Ohtani hitting the market. So it's a very saturated Japanese market. We've also got an outfielder, I think he's 25, Lee, hitting the market at some point here as well. But the big news was the posting. Was that right before Thanksgiving last week, I believe, or was it just after?
Yep,
it was like that Monday.
Yeah, so Yamamoto, they've got until the early parts of January. So he's got a 45-day window to sign. And within that window, he's got to negotiate with teams. And I think he was supposed to be coming to the winter meetings for that. The rumor was he wanted to play with another Japanese-born player, but that has been called lost in translation.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to look at for that. But of the two, probably Yamamoto is the one that's more coveted and is expected to get the bigger deal. But I've been reading a lot more on Iwagama, and he's a guy that you don't want to sleep on either.
Does he have the higher strikeout rate of the two, too? Right?
Mm-hmm.
The lefty guy does?
He's the lefty.
He has
30, isn't he?
He has the better strikeout to walk ratio, but not the
That's
better strikeout rate. He's the lefty Iwagama. I think he had like a 1.07 walk rate and like a above 9 strikeout rate, whereas Yamamoto had like a 10 or 11 strikeout rate with like a 2.3 walk rate. So I think Yamamoto's terrible. But
And Yamamoto had a sub-2 ERA over the last 3 seasons. Is like sub-1.9 too. So
I think we should also point out that most of, if not all, these guys were on the team that won the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah.
So
with Lars Nootbaar.
Yeah, with Lars Nootbaar.
What do we think? Will we have some answers from these guys through the winter meetings, or do you think that because it is an extended 45-day period that we're going to have a little bit longer of a leash on this?
I get the feeling that they want to kind of wait until the winter meetings happens and all the teams are in one place. That's just my feeling.
Who's waiting to set the market? Is it Ohtani or Yamamoto?
I'm pretty sure it's Ohtani. That would be my guess, because a team that doesn't get Ohtani is probably going to pivot to the Yamamoto or even Cody Bellinger, because there are a couple teams in on both of them. And I think Cody's going to be a longer last. I don't think Cody Bellinger is going to set the market, because I think Scott Boras is going to wait as long as he can to get the best deal there. So I think we're in a waiting game with where Shohei's going to go, and then the bigger dominoes are going to start to tick off. Now, we had a couple of signings, and we'll get to those in a second. But those aren't ones that I think are really moving the free agency market needle. They're lower end, and there was the one with Aaron Nola. I don't think that was going to really change anything, because all three of us kind of thought he was going back to Philly anyways. So the big thing is Shohei, and then I think the dominoes really start to fall from there.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it, Brandon. It's like the team that ends up spending the money on Ohtani now has less money to spend in other areas, but also, let's say, hypothetically, does go to the Dodgers. Now the Yankees and Mets and those type teams are really going to go in on Yamamoto. So if I am Yamamoto, I'm waiting for Ohtani to sign, knowing that those teams that did not get Ohtani now have availability of funds to pay him or offer him what he's likely going to get, 200 plus million, right?
Yeah, I think I saw like 9 years and 220 as the expectation, which is kind of wild, because how many pitchers get 9 years and $220 million, especially one that we've never seen pitch on American soil, right? Yeah. So the hype is there.
Yeah, and from everything I've read, he is going to be the assumption is he's going to be the best Japanese pitcher to come over yet. Now, look, I think there is always an adjustment period for a couple of reasons. We use a different baseball; it's slicker, it's a different weight, bigger. So there will be an adjustment period, and I'm sure the breaking ball is probably not going to move as much, but he looks pretty good to me.
Senga just came over and did pretty well, so I think the translation there should be okay. Maybe a little bit of a scooch back on what he has been doing, but still, if you go from a 1.9 to a 2.5, I think whoever gets you is going to be pretty happy.
Yeah, right.
I mean, Yamamoto, have you guys seen the stat who he's tied with? He's won MVP 3 years in a row now in Japan. And only two other players have done that. He tied it. Hishi Yamada in 1976 and 1978, and Ichiro Suzuki, 94 to 96.
I heard he had a decent career.
Yeah. I heard he was kind of okay.
Didn't hit enough power, though.
Yeah. 5,000 hits between the two leagues.
Yeah, and he was a dude who he said he would hit for more power, but he would only hit 260. So, amazing player there. I don't know too much about the guy from the 1970s, but if you're getting compared with them, you're going to be coming over with high regards. But also high regards, we've got Shohei Ohtani. He is, we just talked about, probably the market setter. But who is going to set the market for him? That's the big question. And he's been trying to keep it pretty hush-hush. There's not a whole lot of leaks other than trying to get to the deadline. Unless you're the Mets broadcaster, then you maybe have something. I heard that he may have heard something, but
just maybe heard that he heard something.
I heard
we're hearing a lot of things.
So, Ohtani, let's get right into it. The biggest free agent in MLB history. We kind of discussed this a couple of weeks ago in our free agency predictions, but now that we are a couple of weeks into the offseason, we've had a little bit more time to stew on what's going on. What's going to happen? We're heading into the the winter meetings here within the next 4 days. By this time, a week from today, will he have a new jersey?
Yeah, I think he will. I mean, I think it's going to be probably the first 2 or 3 days in the winter meetings. He's the biggest free agent that has ever been available. And to be quite honest, that truly limits the amount of teams he can go to. So it's not like he's meeting with all 30 clubs, right?
He could. The way he's keeping this hush-hush, I feel like the mystery teams there's a lot of them, because the obvious ones are there: Cubs, Dodgers, Giants, Yankees.
I think Mariners should be too.
Mariners have already come out and I thought they said that they're out already.
Oh, are they? I didn't see that.
Yeah, I did see a report that came out that said it doesn't make financial sense for the Mariners, and the Mariners kind of were like, yeah, it doesn't really make financial sense.
But
So,
even the Blue Jays have said, hold on, we don't want, there's been talks that we're going to move Bichette or talking about moving Bichette, but we're not doing that unless we lose out on Ohtani. So Ohtani's just free agent, trading, everything.
Here's my take on it. Every GM in the MLB outside of, I don't know, Oakland or Royals, right? Like, they're not checking in on Ohtani, but every other GM, they've checked in on him. They need to know what his market's at because they wouldn't be doing their job if they hadn't, right? You wouldn't be a major league GM if you weren't like, hey man, what's the price? Okay.
Right.
Too much for us.
Thanks.
Too much for us. Yeah. Click. You know,
at least say you made the call.
Yeah. Right. Like, you can't go to your owner and say, hey, by the way, I don't even know. I didn't even call. Right. Like,
you can at least say to your fans.
Yeah. Right.
At least make that article that, yes, the Kansas City Royals are talking with Shohei Ohtani's agent.
They're in on that. And oh man, don't get me started on that. We're in on Ohtani. BS. It's a freaking smoke screen. But anyways, it limits the amount of teams that truly have the ability to negotiate with him. So I don't think it's going to take that long. He wants to play for a winner, which means that's probably 3 or 4 teams, and there's another 2 or 3 of those teams that are truly have the ability to sign him with the money. So I don't think it's going to take that long.
Him, are you in win mode now, or are you kind of like that could be a couple years from now?
I don't think he wants to wait. I mean, think about like when he signed with the Angels. That was the same thing that what happened when he went to the Angels. They had the best player in the MLB and Mike Trout, and they're like, we're going to build a team around you. Well, guess what? 8 years later, they still hadn't made the playoffs. So
is there any chance he does go back to the Angels? Because there still is
zero
potential.
I think zero.
I think
zero chance.
There's a bad taste in the mouth of Anaheim with him not just getting the W's, getting the playoffs. I think it's just no.
Despite what that psychic said, I don't think he's going back to the Angels.
So where does he go?
Yeah, I was going to say, outside of the big teams, the Cubs, Dodgers, Red Sox, Giants, who's a mystery team that you think could also pull him in?
What? So you got to say what you said in our group chat.
What did I say?
Oh God, what did I say? In the
Habla español, señor.
Oh. yeah. Our mystery team is like there's so many random like posts coming out about Ohtani that's just nothing but fluff. It's like, oh, I heard that Ohtani's trying to learn Spanish and he really wants to go to Miami. Miami's now the front runner for Ohtani, because he's really.
You heard it here first.
I heard a rumor that we're going to get news today about Ohtani going to Miami because he wants to learn Spanish. Oh, man.
A team on the outside that doesn't hop out. How about the Rangers?
Ooh,
they've already added all the money that they could, right? Why not just keep adding? If you're going to continue to try to go all in, you're not going to have DeGrom this year. You're not going to have. But can you imagine after this year, Scherzer's money's off the books? Then you got DeGrom and Ohtani back to potentially pitch in that rotation with John Gray.
At that point in time, some of their young guys will be there.
Yeah. So
they'd be dangerous.
Yeah. Stays in the AL West where he's comfortable, right? He's played in the AL West already, so he knows that schedule. And he would get to pitch against the Angels multiple times a year.
Yeah. Do you guys feel like it's about the money for him? No. But he's going to get the record amount of money. So is it really about the money? Like, I don't think it's about the money, right? Like,
no.
Obviously, he's going to get paid a crap ton.
Yeah.
Whoever paying him is paying him money. So whether it's I don't think a $5 million difference is going to be the deal.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to come down to the highest bidder. I think it's more so he's the kind of guy that just is looking for more of a better fit necessarily compared to the highest bidder.
God, this is such a homer pick. But I already said I think he's going to sign with the Mariners. But my outside pick is the Braves. For the only reason because
Got Ozuna. Come on.
yeah.
The Braves don't have another Japanese guy, do they? So
no. But it's just the record of winning, right? Like we've been to the playoffs consistently. I think we're still going to control that division, and it's getting into the playoffs, right?
You think you can control that division, huh? Bryce Harper.
Yeah.
Okay, Arcia.
I do. I do. Because the Phillies, despite how good their roster is on paper, have finished third the last 5 years. It's been the Braves or the Mets every year. So
Phillies didn't finish third this year.
Where were they? They named fourth?
They're second.
Second, yeah. Oh, that's right. The Mets sucked. They were in third last year.
I don't know. So
how easily we forget.
Yeah.
Trying to think of like an outside team. There's no team in the NL Central besides the Cubs. I don't think the Reds are in. I don't think the Pirates. I don't think
he's too young for the Cardinals.
Yes. So
have
that
you
I don't
seen
think
that rotation? We'll get to that in a second. Sorry.
In the East, you got the Braves. I think the Phillies already have. I mean, I don't see the Phillies fitting.
No.
Or having the money for. They already just signed Nola. They got Bryce Harper already. The Mets. But they don't have a core group of players right now for Ohtani to come in and say, yes, these are core winning guys. I like that Rangers pick. The Rangers have a core set of guys, and they're still young too. It's not like they have expiring contracts. That's a good pick.
Yeah, if Brennan hadn't picked the Rangers, I think that's a good fit, honestly, for him.
Could anybody in the AL Central sign him?
No. The White Sox are out. Twins are out. He's not going to Minnesota.
No.
Detroit would be a sleeper, but that's still Detroit, and they've got a young core.
Let's be honest. The Yankees and the Mets, while they have the money, like the Mets, they're on the downtrend, man. There's really no way to kind of put that unless some young guys really step up. And the Yankees, we just don't know what they're going to be. I don't know. They just don't have the lineup. So if it truly is about winning, I don't know that either New York team really is going to have the opportunity.
So, okay. I picked the Dodgers first. I'm going to say the sneaky team would be the Rangers, but I'm thinking more and more. I think it's likely that he ends up with the Cubs. For the reason is, if they had the DH 6 years ago, rumor has it that was his preferred destination. They are making moves. They have a young team who can compete for a long term, and I've heard that he is they're willing to potentially add in an opt-out clause in his deal. Whether or not he wants that or not, we'll see. Harper didn't want it, but especially for the arm's sake, if he's worried about potentially extending that career a little longer with another contract and he wants to opt out, that could be a sneaky way to grab him. I just think I was talking about this with our buddy from Bums in the Bleachers, John Oliva, Dram Daddy on Instagram. I was a little skeptical with all these reports about Ohtani to the Cubs because usually when the Cubs are on something, they usually don't leak it out there. Right? Nobody saw the council thing coming. Even the John Lester thing was, are we going to get him? Are we not? They knew they were in on him, but didn't know how big they were in on him. Even Anthony Rizzo was thought, but there was not a whole lot of smoke there. So when the Cubs do make moves, especially under Jed Hoyer, it's not necessarily leaked out there. So I was thinking that's maybe a little bit of smoke. But then the more I thought about it, it's not Ohtani's people leaking it because they want to keep it hush-hush. So if it's out there, it's coming from the Cubs. So I don't know. That would be I guess I'm going homer-ish on that one, but it makes a lot more sense than some of these other sneaky teams that come through.
I picked the Braves, so whatever. We're all about the homer pick today.
I would think the Giants have been trying to spend money for the last 2 years. They tried Correa. They tried Arson.
Yeah, and that's one of the teams where, for me, it just doesn't make sense. Like, he would go to that team and be the only guy there, right? Except
I think
for
it
Webb,
would be
right?
Anaheim times
2.0.
Yeah, 2.0.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think he wants that. So that's why, like, I see all these reports coming out, and I'm like, man, like there was something about the Yankees today. I'm like, man, that just doesn't make sense for me. Unless the Yankees are about to drop $1 billion on like Yamamoto and Ohtani and Bellinger, I don't.
So do the Red
see that
Sox have a
happening.
chance?
I think the Red Sox could.
I think they do.
They have a top 5 farm system. They do have Yoshi over there playing outfield. They have a history with Dice K.
And they
So
have
I would say my
that's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I'd say my 3 teams that I'd be surprised if he signed outside of the Dodgers, Cubs, or Red Sox. I'd be surprised.
yeah, I would probably agree with that. As much as some of the other things we're talking about, Blue Jays have an outside chance, the Mariners have an outside chance. In reality,
you think he's leaving Japan to come to play for Canada?
No,
see what I heard is
and pay those taxes.
He really likes maple syrup, though.
Yeah.
So.
He'll have it shipped to wherever he wants with all his millions.
So moving on from the Shohei Ohtani deal, one of the best arms on the market. Aaron Nola already kind of hinted at that. He comes in, and he was the first player to sign a 7-year, $172 million deal with the Phillies. I don't know if I'm necessarily surprised by it, but what do you guys think about the years and the money?
What's that AAV there? Someone do some math for me.
It would be 20 if it was 140 million. So we're looking at just probably about 24, right? 24.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
24 and a half to almost 25.
Yeah, almost 25.
It makes perfect sense, right? I don't think it's too high. I think it is what he deserves. I think he is the premier innings getter. We've talked about that. So not surprised by it. It's just one of those that just makes sense, right?
Yeah, I think he was comfortable in Philly. Philly was comfortable with him. It took a couple of days to get that done. So I'm not surprised. I don't really think it changes the market. I'm happy because in the pool I get a check mark next to that one. But 7 years, 172 million. They've spent a lot of money over the last couple of years. Does tell me that they're probably out on Reese. We kind of talked about that a couple of weeks ago with Bryce moving to first full time, but it's kind of the nail in the coffin. And I don't know if they're going to be big on any other big signings from there. I'd be surprised if we see another 3 or 4 year deal coming from the Phillies with a higher AAV, because it just, unless they trade Castellanos, it's probably coming through a trade if they get anything else rather than via signing.
They just don't have many holes in their roster, right?
That's why they're maybe the seller of the NL East, right? They're going to be the seller of the NL East, right, Wes?
No, they'll finish second.
Finish fourth, just like last year. So Aaron Nola signs. Moving on, Sonny Gray signed this week. Sonny Gray, a 3-year, $75 million deal with the St. Louis Cardinals. How do we feel about this one? I think the team was more of a surprise, but I think the money in the deal is right in line where I thought he'd be.
It's about the same AAV as Nola, is it not? 24, 25?
Yeah. Probably a couple 100,000 higher AAV, but just about. It's almost identical. I think
Gray
Nola's
probably
24,833.
The Cardinals went to Gray, said, "Dude, you're old. We like you. Come sign with us." He said, they said, "We'll give you the same thing Nola got." So,
yeah, I was listening to, I forget which podcast it was, maybe the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast, and they were talking about, it was Foul Territory, actually. And they were talking about this story of when he was with the Yankees and Rothschild was the pitching coach there, and all they wanted him to do was throw sliders. Slider. That's it. And he wasn't allowed to throw his cutter. And so 2022 was the first time that he actually had gone back to the cutter. He actually threw it like 13% of the time. So for me, I felt like that kind of had to play into it a little bit, where he knew he was going to go to a team that would allow him to be the guy he wanted to be, right, as a pitcher. I don't know that he's had that. Maybe, Minnesota is the first place that he's been where he actually had that outside of, Oakland. So I don't know. I guess it makes sense, but I do think it was a little bit of a surprise, the Cardinals, off the top of the head, because I thought that he might go to more of a competitive team. And I don't know how competitive the Cardinals are.
I don't know. You see this rotation, man? An average age of 35 years old, tweeted out by Talking Baseball. So Sonny's the ace. The other two additions to that rotation, Lance Lynn, who returns back to the Cardinals, he'll be the number 3. And then Kyle Gibson, I thought that's a sneaky number 5. I will say that's a good signing for the Cardinals. I would have been okay if the Cubs signed Kyle Gibson at that deal just as a 5th starter who's going to be an innings eater, continues to just pitch, right? 150-plus innings as a number 5, and he's going to give you what he gave you with the Baltimore Orioles last year. I'd take that day in and day out, but that is not a rotation that scares me a ton. Obviously, Sonny's fantastic, or he was last year. 300-plus innings in a 2.9 ERA in the last 2 years in Minnesota. So he stays in a crappy division, just a different Central division. But that doesn't really scare me when it comes to an everyday pitching staff.
There's not going to be a lot of strikeouts.
No.
I got to share this. My favorite part was Sonny Gray said, "I really want to be a Cardinal. I wanted to be a Cardinal all along." And this was his first image with a Cardinal uniform on. Yeah, you look pretty excited, dude.
Very excited. Very excited.
Yeah, ecstatic.
$75 million over 3 years. That's not terrible. And we talked about the other signings there. It doesn't move the needle for me. That team already had an old pitching staff last year. Might as well bring Adam Wainwright out of retirement again because it's just about the same age. I don't think it tells me that the Cardinals aren't really serious going into this year, that they're still in that phase of trying to compete because you're in a difficult, you're in a crappy enough division that you can steal a season, but we're not going to go 100% all in.
This is just an Edwin Jackson type of signing right here.
It says to me that they're not looking at it with a realistic lens. Like, they don't understand where they truly are in the baseball hierarchy right now. I mean, if they said, "Hey, we're true competitors," do you go out and try and sign a Yamamoto, right? Or you go out and try and sign a Blake Snell? I mean,
I thought they were going to be in on Snell big time.
I did too. Look, no disrespect to Sonny Gray or Lance Lynn, but Lance Lynn was not great last year, and Sonny Gray was pretty good, but is he a 1 right now? I don't know about that.
He was the 1 in Minnesota until Pablo Lopez took over in the second half. So he's top 2 at least for sure.
Yeah, I could.
He improves the rotation. I just don't think it's a huge improvement.
It's just with everything that happened with the Cardinals last year, with Walker being sent down for no reason, all of the media attention, the negative media attention, it's just like it's like they're not living in reality of where their team is truly at.
Yeah. It's like they can't tell their fan base that, hey, we're rebuilding. They can't.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah.
They have to. We're the St. Louis Cardinals. We win year in and year out. Yeah. That's what this organization does. They cannot do a reset year like the Mets are obviously doing here, where they traded away everybody and released everybody at the August deadline.
Yeah. Wes, you'll probably go ahead.
I'm surprised that Goldschmidt is still there at this point.
So what I was going to say is you'll probably appreciate this more because you worked in hockey and you know hockey a little more than Michael. But this reminds me of the 2010, 11, 12 Detroit Red Wings, right? A team that was consistently
historic team, right?
Historic, always in
One of
the
the
playoffs.
originals.
Yep, always making it into the playoffs and going deep
Yeah.
with a core group of players that got old and you didn't
Yep.
capitalize on it. We're talking Yachty, Waino, even look at Pujols a couple years ago, and then now Goldschmidt and Arenado. Now they've got some younger guys.
Lance Lynn.
Yeah, right. So this all really reminds me of the Detroit Red Wings of 10 years ago. That kind of just finally went off into the sunset.
Like, if you remember what happened to them, once they finally admitted that they weren't very good, they sucked, and they still aren't very good. You know,
they
Steve
just signed Patty Kane,
now, right? They signed Pat Kane. I mean, he's like what, 36 now?
Yeah, he is old.
But
no, he's 30. He's my age. He just turned 34 like last week.
Really? That's not bad.
Yeah, no.
They can't admit. Going back to the Cardinals is like they just can't admit that what they truly need to do is blow it up and start over. Get some young talent in there, tear it down. Like, man, because the expectations for last season where they were going to win the division, like they always do because they're Cardinals. But
So with this, do you think Oliver Marmol will be the coach or manager at this point next year?
No.
I think he's the first one on the hot seat going into next year, personally.
I agree. I think he's out. I think Goldie gets traded. I still think Arenado gets traded. Like, if they go into this season and the first 2 months they're not good, which
if they're not in front of, I guess the Pirates is the only ones I think they could be in front of. But even the Pirates aren't going to be that bad.
Well, they could have Skeens up by the middle of the year. They're going to have O'Neill back, and they had a decent.
They got some young talent, man.
Yeah. They've got probably, but right now, I'd say the best closer in the NL Central. Bednar, right?
Bednar, yeah.
Unless Cubs sign Hader, but
I love that throw in there. Unless Cubs sign Hader, so
moving on, the trade market heating up. A lot of names out there here over the last couple of days, the last couple of weeks. I still think the trade market's going to take some time to develop, but between Corbin Burnes, Tyler Glasnow, Shane Bieber, Alex Bregman, Dylan Cease, Jonathan India, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, we're going to break them all down. Let's start with probably, I'd say, the biggest. Wow, this came out of nowhere. Corbin Burnes. Are they shopping him? They got rid of Woodruff. Now, are they going tear down?
I think this is the weirdest time. The Brewers just won the division, and they're going to be looking to possibly tear down. There's talks of tear down. I don't think they are, based on the news that came out today, and it's Wes's fantasy player Jackson Churio, that they're going to give him a Luis Robert, Fernando Tatis type of deal where they're going to sign him right away and he'll make his major league debut with a 10-year, $100 million deal. If it wasn't for that news, then I would think they're going to be tearing down, and Corbin Burnes is a Los Angeles Dodger after they don't sign Yamamoto.
I'm impartial on the whole situation with Churio. Like, that shouldn't determine when he comes up. Like, isn't that the whole point of all the rule changes, is so that the service time isn't manipulated? And in what I read, they want to give him a deal so that they can bring him up right now. And why does that matter? Like, why is he, if he's that good, to give him a deal right now, why is he not already have the opportunity to make the team out of spring training? Why are you saying off the bat that he's only going to AAA regardless of what he does in spring? That makes no sense to me. But to Burns' point, yeah, I do think that signals that they still want to win. They still have a lot of young talent. Jacob Mizorowski, who, if you watched him in the Futures game, he's going to be the next front-end guy for them. He's an ace. His stuff is absolutely disgusting. He's like 102. Yeah, Ethan has him already. Okay. I was upset about it. But I don't know. I could see Burnes moving, but I don't know that the Brewers, it's just be a weird time for it. So
the good hypothetical I saw was Burnes and Willie Adames to the Dodgers for Emmett Shaheen and
Ryan Pepio.
But then who's their short? Lux.
Gavin Lux. Yeah.
So they swap shortstops. The Dodgers get a frontline type of guy, already proven guy, and the Brewers get years of control in Shaheen.
Yeah, I could see that. I would be in favor of the Brewers trading Burnes. He's the true number one, right? But also, like, if you think about it, if you're the Brewers, you just had your ace, Brandon Woodruff. 2 years ago, you'd probably say it was Woodruff then Burnes, real close 1-2. Now Woodruff just got non-tendered.
Yeah.
You're scared to do the same thing with Burnes, and then say he has a tweak. He didn't have a fully healthy year this year either, I don't believe. I think he missed some time early. You'll lose the potential that if you aren't doing well by the trade deadline and you'd want to get rid of him, well, all of a sudden now he's dealing with an arm injury or something's barking, and it's like, okay, well, we lost out on that value. And with the signing of Pat Murphy as the manager, do we think that that's a win now mode? I don't know much about Pat Murphy, but like it doesn't scream to me like we're in.
I don't know that it is, but I don't know that there are many other options out there.
True.
I mean, David Ross maybe, but yeah.
David Ross was, yeah.
Yeah, like we said, that could have just been a perfect swap. They could have traded managers, but
that would be a total kick in the nuts, right? For Brewers fans too.
Yeah. I would find it hard to believe that the Brewers would make the decision to sell based on the fact that Craig Counsell is no longer there. That would be a little strange.
I wonder if it's more, instead of the hypothetical trade I gave with getting back Sheehan, doesn't necessarily sell, it's a retool. It's not a full-on rebuild that the Cardinals need to do, but it's a retool. The thing that the Cardinals and Braves always do well in the past. I like it for the Brewers. Sell high on your ace. You get back a middle rotation guy in Emmett. You get Lux, who I think has better days ahead of him.
Well, it's the Brewers' new GM too, right?
Yeah,
the brand new GM. So his chance to put a fingerprint on the team and say, here's the direction I see us going. I think it makes a little more sense, but we'll see. So Corbin Burnes potentially being sold by the Brewers. The next name on the list, we're going to go with Tyler Glasnow, lefty who has not had the best health, but when he has been healthy, he's been a top of the rotation starter.
You say lefty?
Tyler Glasnow?
Yeah.
Is he not a lefty?
When he's been healthy, he said.
No.
I said lefty.
Right.
Is he not a lefty? He's a righty?
He's a right. Yeah, he's a righty.
Oh, you know what? I'm thinking him and Austin Meadows both came up at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Also, I got a cold, so no, I messed that one up.
I was like, wait.
I really think the rumors right now are Cubs and Reds are hot in on Glasnow. And all of a sudden, that's been the news. Cubs on Glasnow. All of a sudden, it was all Reds on Glasnow too. So that's the Rays barking back. And now the news came out today. Oh, the Cubs are talking about Bieber too. I think that's the Cubs now firing back. I think it's done. I think it's as good as done. Glasnow's to the Cubs.
I love the fact that you said that, because it's like, this is media warfare for the front offices, where it's like, I honestly feel like the front offices strategically release information.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? Like,
teams
do that all the time, right? Like Nick Saban does that all the time. So I think teams are strategically releasing information. Hey, we're in on this guy. You know what I mean? If you're gonna, you better pony up, right?
Is there a scene in Moneyball where he calls and is like, "Nope, I got him. You can't have him."
Yeah, exactly. Being that I did go to the Trop a few days ago, and I sent you guys a photo of Glasnow still on the stadium, we'll wait to hear. What I think the Rays are doing is they're scouring every minor league system right now to find the next Junior Caminero, the next whoever they can trade rape for freaking a low A guy.
I would watch that word when it comes to the Rays.
We'll edit that piece out. That's a good call. I think they're scouring minor league systems right now to see who's a good fit because that's
think
kind of what they do.
The Rays already know it's gonna be an underwhelming package. I think it's not gonna be like a top 3 prospect. It's gonna be 2 like 11, 12 kind of guys. But the Rays have had their eye on those guys. What do you think, Brandon?
I do think that there's some leverage with the Bieber thing, but I do think the Bieber thing is still real because the Cubs general manager, Carter Hawkins, was originally in Cleveland. So there's definitely a tie. He knows Bieber probably just as well as anybody out there because he was in charge there, or he was assistant there, I believe, in Cleveland for the few years leading up to his promotion at the Cubs. So while there's pandering, I do think the Cubs are saying, okay, if you're not going to give us what you want to get, if you're not going to give us Glasnow for what we're offering, then we're going to find a different way to get what we need and what we want. Of the two, I'd probably take Tyler just because I think the stuff is better when healthy, but I wouldn't be opposed to Bieber because he still has ace or top 2 stuff the Cubs needed. It's only going to be 1 year, either of them. So there's no one bad 1-year deal. It's just going to be who's going to cost the least. It's probably a 10 to 15 in the Cubs organization is probably a top 10 if it's the Reds, right? Because the Cubs have, I believe they just ranked them the number 1 farm system in baseball. And it's not necessarily that they're stacked with a bunch of very amazing prospects, but they are a very, very deep system. You're probably able to give up a little bit less as the Cubs for whoever it is because you have so much more depth than a team like the Reds, who may not be willing to give up a top 10 prospect, where the Cubs could be like, yeah, here, take our top 15 because we've got 20 more of these guys, or vice versa. So, who did they go to? I think it's probably the Cubs. See, I also get scared trading with the Rays because the Rays always seem to get the better end of a deal anytime that there's a deal.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't know.
Here's my take on it. If the Rays are calling me and they're like, hey, we're shopping Glasnow, what are you going to give me? I'm like, click. I'm sorry, I can't listen. They got somebody. They know more about my players than I know about my players.
Yeah, they're calling and they're like, hey, they call, hey, we offering Glasnow. And you say, what do you want? And the Rays say, what do you think about Jackson? And you're like, why? We'll see. You hang up and you go, why do they want Jackson? What is it? What is it? We're not that high on Jackson. They're thinking
they call
Jackson,
their head scout. They're like, hey, what's the deal with Jackson? Tell me about Jackson. Why is Jackson good? Yeah, Jackson's okay. You know,
we have Jackson as a C. You know,
yeah, he's a 40 future grade. Like, what are you talking about? And then he gets to the Rays organization. Suddenly, he's a freaking
all-star third baseman.
Yeah. What?
I get a little weary with the Rays just because of that, but then again, I'd like to think that Glasnow at some point is going to have a healthy season. They're both in their contract year, so they're both going to have theoretically their best year of their career. But
I agree with you guys 100%, and I would say that the two teams that were linked were the Cubs and the Braves, and the reason I think the Cubs have a better chance is because the Braves have 2 guys that they could potentially trade top end minor league talent, right? That's Hurston Waldrop and AJ Smith-Shawver. Like, if the Braves don't want to give up those guys, or they think that's too high of a price, like, we literally have nothing else to offer, right? That we could truly go get Glasnow. And we're 28th, right, in the farm system rankings. Whereas the Cubs, I think, the Orioles are 1, and then the Cubs are like, what, 2?
Depends what system what ranking.
Is Baseball America like had the Cubs 1?
I think
or something.
It was came out last week. Yeah.
Baseball America just came out, so that might be what it is. Like, still, it doesn't matter. Like, the Cubs have the availability to go get Glasnow, whereas the Braves are just kind of. I saw a meme today, and it was SpongeBob, and it was like a seashell, and that's it. And it's like, here's what I got for Glasnow. What are you going to take? That's the Braves. We don't have much to offer, so I don't honestly see that happening.
So, Brandon, if we want to stick Cubs here for a second, would you rather the Cubs use some of their prospect stash for Glasnow or Soto?
Glasnow.
Yeah, I think so. I think because he costs less.
100%. You're not going to, and you've got a chance to re-sign him theoretically.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas Soto, you don't. You're not re-signing Soto. He's going to free agency.
Yeah, Soto's going to free agency no matter what. If you can get Glasnow in and he likes it and you get some production and also he's like, hey, I'd like to stay here. I'll take – because even if he does make his free agency, there's going to be a lot of question mark about – think of the Carlos Rodon thing, right? He's probably even more often injured than Rodon was. So –
yeah,
sure, he could, but Rodon had back-to-back healthy seasons. Glasnow hasn't. Heading into free agency, he did pitch 120 innings last year, 21 starts. I'd probably say Glasnow because also I think there's more of a need in that rotation for the Cubs than I think offensively.
Yeah,
you've got
agreed.
guys, and you could if you pieced it together with Canario, you could probably. And I'm not saying Canario's Soto, but I think you get a better the Cubs arms other than Cade Horton, who may be up anyways this year, whether you sign Glasnow or trade for Glasnow or not. He's likely going to be up, but I think you could probably replace production for Soto easier in a lineup right now than you would be able to in that rotation, because outside of Justin Steele, Kyle Hendricks is a 4 right now. You got Jordan Wicks, who's probably a 3 at best.
At best.
Other than that, you've got Drew Smyly. No. Jameson Tyone. He had a better second half, but I'd say 3 at best as well. So you need a 2, you need a 1. I'd say that Steele's a 2 on a good team. On a winning team, I think Justin Steele is a number 2 pitcher. So you need a number 1. And I think Glasnow, when healthy, can be that. You go Glasnow, Steele, then maybe Tyone or
righty
Wick.
lefty right there
Oh,
as
yeah.
a 1-2. That's what you want.
You could go Glasnow, Steele, Tyone, Wicks, Hendricks.
And imagine what
And-
that
and
looks
you've
like
got-
the following year, 2025.
And you throw in Horton.
You throw in Horton. You throw in Ohtani.
Yep.
Did I say Ohtani? Sorry.
You did. You did. Well, that's another thing, too. Like, even by getting Glasnow, you're not hurting the Ohtani thing because he's not going to pitch this year. So you're basically getting Glasnow as Ohtani the pitcher. And then when he leaves, you've got Ohtani the pitcher theoretically the next year. If we're staying in the Cubs realm here, I think Bieber makes more sense for the Reds because he's cheaper in price. $12 million, I think, is his ARB expectation this year, while Glasnow's at 25.
Right.
Yep. I think the Reds, their major piece depends on the teams that need a second baseman because their main focus is to trade India, or I guess the main thing that has come up about the Reds is them trading India for a frontline starter. So that, then who needs a second baseman? The Dodgers need a second baseman. Let's see. Seattle needs a second baseman, right? I could definitely see Cincinnati trading with Seattle and getting like an Emerson Hancock, and they got one other kid that just came up that he's like their number 5 prospect. That's going to be legit. They do a great job at developing arms in Seattle, but I could see that happening. But I think the Cincinnati trading India is probably the most straightforward trade to me. You're trading India, you're getting an arm, and you might get somebody in return depending on what you're going to get.
Just throwing it out there. Who played second? Oh, Arias did. Never mind. I was going to say who played second for the Marlins. But did he play more so first base or second?
I think so.
Yeah, he played second. He started second. He did play some first, but he mainly played second for them.
Because I was going to say there are some arms that would match up with an India trade there too, but no. Yeah, it's going to be the White Sox, Dylan Cease, and Jonathan India.
That fits. I mean, how much control does India have? He's not.
I think he's got 3 years left. I think he's going into his first year of arbitration. The White Sox wouldn't do it because he's starting to get expensive.
Yeah. Cease to the Braves makes a lot of sense. The White Sox don't seem to.
But which cost-controlled player are the Braves giving up in that deal?
Which cost-controlled player?
You've got to give someone from the everyday starting lineup in that deal if you're going to get Cease, in my mind, because that Braves system is not deep enough. You're probably getting their number one prospect and an everyday starting player within that lineup. So is it Ozzy? Probably not. Arcia's not worth it.
Vaughn Grissom.
Yeah, I think Vaughn Grissom. I think it's Vaughn Grissom and AJ Smith-Shawver are probably the guys that get moved if it's Cease. It just makes the most sense. Okay. I don't think they're going to give up Waldrop because Waldrop's a potential front-end guy.
I would say Michael Harris, but they've already got Luis Robert in center field, Lubob. So, yeah. Or do the Orioles make sense?
I think the Orioles make the most sense to me.
They've got prospect plethora too. They have lots of it.
You're talking about a guy like Jordan Westberg. You could even trade. Who's their current center fielder?
Cedric Mullins.
Mullins. No, that's not what I'm thinking of.
Santander.
That
Jackson. Ryan Montcastle.
The Jackson guy.
Yeah. I'm blanking right now. Yeah, the Jackson Holiday. No. But they have a ton of prospects that they could go get Cease, and he's cost controlled on contract in the next 3 years. So that makes a lot of sense for the Orioles. And we were actually talking about doing that, at the trade deadline, which the Orioles need that one other guy. Grayson Rodriguez, we think is going to be pretty good, but they need that one other guy. And I don't know that they're going to spend the money to do that. I don't know that they're going to go buy a Jordan Montgomery or something like that. It makes more sense to me for them to trade because they literally have so many prospects that they don't have a place to play them.
Right.
And they're all major league ready. They're all producing at AAA. Yeah.
So let's jump to a player that's been around for a while. He's won multiple rings, probably one of the better third basemen in the league. Alex Bregman heading into his final season under contract. I believe it's his contract year. Is he going to be traded by the Astros, you think?
This one's hard for me to see. He's like one of those guys that's just one of the core pieces. And I saw, I think it was Duquette. It might have been Jim Duquette that said, don't sleep on Alex Bregman getting traded, which I can see it. It makes sense. He's going to be a free agent and the Astros need to kind of replenish. But who is he going to? Like they would need to they don't have a third baseman in their minor league system. Not that I know.
The Astros? I'm looking it up right now because that's exactly what I was thinking of. They have a guy at AAA, their 15th best prospect, Will Wagner. Who else plays third base? Their fifth prospect is third baseman, but he's only made it to AA. But the Astros have promoted from AA. That's where Pena came straight from AA.
Well, the question would be, do they have another shortstop prospect? Because a lot of the times you see shortstops move off.
Oh, they do. I mean, Bregman did, but so their number 4 prospect is in single A shortstop prospect.
Not quite ready.
No.
I think the Astros are too much in win now mode to be able to be moving off of that, unless they think that they can't handle the Rangers anymore. But I don't see it.
I'm just looking up. I'm looking at the list right now, and I just don't see many teams that make sense. Maybe the Yankees, maybe the Brewers, but what are the Brewers going to give up for 1 year of Bregman? They're not giving up Burnes for 1 year of Bregman. And what are the Yankees going to give up for Bregman? I don't know that that fits, right?
I'll tell you what, people are wondering what it's going to be like if the Astros trade Bregman. Do you not get that quote?
People are going to wonder what it's going to be like.
People are wondering what it's going to be like if the Astros trade Bregman.
I guess we'll never know.
Thank you. I don't know. I think they'd have to get blown away for a deal for Bregman. I don't think that they'd trade with the Yankees. Also, how much are you trading for Bregman with the stank, right? There's also bringing him into your organization. That's going to if it were me and the Cubs, I would question. I don't know if I could root for this guy, just because of the stuff that he's done for. So then, that changes the price in my mind.
That's a great point, Brandon. Because I was gonna say the Mariners, but that being interdivision, like I don't know that Jerry Dipoto could honestly trade for Bregman and that be like accepted, regardless of how you feel about him. So like I'm glad you brought that up because that's a great point. The Mariners need a third baseman. They have prospects they can give up for him. So
the Mariners need a third baseman because during our hiatus, Eugenio Suarez was traded to the Arizona Diamondbacks for was it the reliever?
It was Gabby
Zavala, the backup catcher, but also the stud right-handed. He was a reliever, I believe, but he'll probably stay in the bullpen there. It starts with a C, I believe, last name, but
Carlos Vargas.
Vargas. Okay. The first name was with a C. I was 50% accurate. Yeah. I don't see Bregman moving. I think it's probably a dangle to see what we can get. And then maybe if they get to the deadline, right? Like if they get to the deadline and they are not competing, or they don't, like say the Mariners finally take that step, they're in third place. They're a distant 8 games back of the division. And they're like, okay, are we going to try for the wild card, or do we get rid of Bregman and finally try to start to stockpile something or get something in return? I don't know.
It's right, Brandon. That could be an interesting year because Verlander's on his last part of the deal, right? 1 year left.
I think this is the pivotal year for the Astros, right? I mean, this is it. When we talked about the Red Wings a while back, right, where this is the kind of the window for the Astros, and it's closing. Bregman's getting a little older. Altuve's getting older. Pena is good. He didn't quite, pan out the way they wanted to. Obviously, Jordan's still there, and Verlander's getting older. They got some young kids, but they certainly don't have the amount of talent that they've had for the last decade.
Right.
Yeah, this might be the year before they could do a retool because they have Hunter Brown isn't, I don't think, coming out and being as good as they were hoping. They're still waiting a decade later, it feels like, for Forrest Whitley to come around.
He's still there.
He's still there. Feels like they should have moved him to the Marlins already by now. But if this is Bregman's final year, they don't have guys quite there waiting in the wings.
I think it's also Jose Altuve's final year.
Is it really?
I believe
Are they both on contract?
Yep. According to Spotrac, this is Altuve's final year under contract.
Wow.
That's going to be an interesting place to be. If they're in first place, obviously they go for it. If they're somewhere in the middle, like what do they do?
Right.
Do you get value for those guys? That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and are they devalued because of the baggage that they come with? Right? Like, are you willing to talk to your franchise? And it looks like that Verlander is through 2025. It looks that his contract did vest for another year, so he's going to be making $35 million in 2025 at the age of 42. So, yeah, but he could still be another arm similar to what just happened with the Mets, right? They were just like, all right, well, we'll just ship you out. Yeah, that'll be an interest. I think more so if we're seeing anything trading from the Astros, it's mid-season than here in the offseason, just for that reason that we're going to give it one last hurrah, and if we need to sell, we're going to start to sell. So that gets down to probably the two other biggest bats on the market, Juan Soto and then Pete Alonso. Let's start with Pete Alonso because I think it'll probably be a quicker discussion and then jump more into Soto. So Pete, I'm hearing more and more that it's more likely that the Mets want to keep him rather than trade him. But I guess if you get the right deal, you don't say no. But will a team be able? What teams need first baseman outside of the Cubs, really, that are like huge in on the
Yankees?
But do you want Bellinger as a first baseman? Well, they've got Rizzo.
Depends.
Too.
They have Rizzo, and then I guess it depends on if they get Bellinger, right? Giants need a first baseman, but I think he would fit in the Yankee Stadium Stadium, assuming they don't get Bellinger. But I don't know. The
Will
Mets
the
are just in a
Yankees and
weird
the Mets
spot.
trade?
Yeah, that's probably a decent question. I don't know. I don't know. The crosstown rivals, that's real.
Especially in New York. Of all cities, I
Yeah.
think New York is where it's the toughest because it's either Yankees or the Mets. And but you're probably not trading in the division. The Marlins already got a first baseman as it is. He wouldn't want to go to the Nationals, and the Nationals aren't really in a win it now mode.
I got a team for you. The Cubs.
See, as a Cubs fan, I would say no personally, just for the fact that with him being a Boris agent client, I'm not trading for any Boris agent client out there, because with Boris as your agent, you're going to free agency no matter what. So whatever you give up as the Cubs give up, whether it's Soto or Alonso, I don't think it makes sense, because you're going to just be basically burning your prospects. Now, sure, if you think, say you get Ohtani and you get another one of the bigger arms, then maybe let's go for it this year, because this is the year then. But I don't, I see the Cubs more so trying to win this year, but 2025 is like this is balls to the wall, all in. I don't think it's 2024. I think 2024 is let's win and maybe see if we can get lucky. But I think 2025 is what they're really setting themselves up for.
Here's what I'm struggling with Alonso is the first base position is so deep as I'm looking at these teams, right? Like, it is so deep. Yeah, he's probably, for me, I'd have to say he's probably, 5 on that list? Maybe 4, but still, it's not like teams are going to give up, like, a ton to get this guy. I just don't see that happening when most teams have at least a decent, serviceable first baseman, right? Let's talk like the Rangers. They have Nate Lowe. Top 10 first baseman. Is he groundbreaking? No, but are the Rangers going to trade for Pete Alonso to get a little bit better? I don't know. I just don't see that happening with many teams. Like maybe the Mariners.
Alonso uses such a big thump in the lineup. You know, the potential for 40 plus home runs. That's the floor. I almost think 40 home runs for Alonso. So that type of bat. I mean, he's not hitting as bad as Kyle Schwarber batting average wise, right? In the 180s.
Is he on base the same amount though? Because Schwarber at least gets on like almost a 400 clip.
Walks.
Yeah, what a stat line for that guy. The guy's an animal. The team I always is the surprise team. I'm mentioning again. It's the Giants. The Giants have Lamont Wade Jr. at first base right now. I think the Giants have money to spend, and this could be maybe just a leap year for them to. I don't know.
But he doesn't cost money right now. He costs prospects. And what do the Giants have that the Mets want? That would be the matchup, right? Like, because the Giants know then we're going for it this year with Alonso, because maybe we try to sell him on San Fran. Also, where is Alonso from? Is he from the West Coast? Because then that makes a lot more sense. But I don't know. Like,
I could see a fit in Milwaukee. They have some prospects that they might give up. They need a first baseman. And Milwaukee's a great place to go hit. You know, for Alonso, he would probably be happy to go to Milwaukee and up his stats before he's a free agent. You know,
Alonso was drafted from the Florida Gators.
Oh, sorry. He went to Plant High School like 20 minutes from me. You asked that question and it didn't register. Yeah, he's from Plant. He went to Plant High School.
Okay, so he's not going to Miami or Tampa.
He's not going to Tampa, all right? So,
that's a fit though. Miami, right?
Not in the division, and they've got Josh Bell still, don't they?
I thought he was is he a free agent?
Yeah, I want to say he was a free agent.
I know they released Garrett Cooper, but
they traded
it would
Garrett
be a
Cooper,
fit,
didn't they? They traded Garrett Cooper.
Traded Cooper. Sorry,
to the Padres. You're good.
I could see a fit in Miami, but I don't like. They're not going to.
No, Bell's still there.
Yeah, I was going to say I thought Bell signed a 2-year deal with.
But they need pop. They're losing Soler.
Yeah.
That's what they only had Arias, who got on base at an amazing clip, but otherwise they didn't have anybody driving in runs.
But then that you think about it, you're asking for a higher price inside the division. And do the Marlins want to spend that money on Alonso even this year, because they're known to not even spend money on players in the first place? So that's why they didn't give Soler the qualifying offer, because they were scared he was going to accept a $21 million offer. When that's all.
Here's the dilemma with the Mets, though, right? Is they have some superstars like Alonso, right? Like Lindor, like Senga. But they weren't great last year, but they also have some young, really good players up and coming. Francisco, Vientos, Brett Beatty. They didn't necessarily pan out, but they're still good players. Like, I think the Mets are in a weird position where they don't know which direction to go. Right? Do you trade Lindor? Do you trade Alonso and retool? You just signed Senga, so they're in a weird spot, right?
Yeah.
And do you get more by trading Alonso or just by giving him the qualifying offer at the end of the year? Or is it that big of a difference, right? Because you're going to get a top 35 pick, more likely, because he's going to be probably
that's a good point.
He's going to be, you probably get the second, because it's going to be Soto, Alonso getting the qualifying offers next year. Those are probably your top two highest paid players. Soto's probably going to get the highest contract, and then it's going to be Alonso. So you're probably getting pick 32. Well, obviously picks don't always translate, but you're getting pick 32, which is a pretty good prospect if you were to trade it on the open market. So do you just keep him in qualifying offer him, or wait until the deadline and maybe, God forbid, Freddie Freeman hurts himself and the Dodgers are all in? They're 5 games up on the Diamondbacks or the Padres or whoever, but they're like, hey, we need it. We need this bat. Do the Dodgers go and overspend? Hey, not to put it out there, but Matt Olson, right? Like, I'm looking at the teams that have like the better first baseman that you wouldn't trade for Alonso, but if it's for 2 months of them and your guy's out the rest of the year, you maybe wait to the deadline.
But that's what Alonso would want too, because it would he would not be tied to a qualifying offer then.
Right. He'd rather probably get traded at the deadline. So,
right.
Yeah.
And you might be able to get a little bit more of a desperate team at that point, and then that makes it a lot more.
And you go to a winner.
Right, and a lot more valuable for the Mets. Say, okay, they're going to overpay for this guy where we were going to get the 32nd pick, but now we're getting a top 5 prospect out of a team. So, I don't know. So let's turn to Soto then, who is probably the biggest trade chip out there. He's going into his final year of his deal. He's the youngest. He'll be, what, 24 or 25 when he gets
25. Yeah, 25. Which is insane because he's been in the league for like 8 years, I swear.
Yeah. So, what do we think? Trade it or no?
Yeah. Yeah, from what I've seen, it's not is it a fit for somebody else? It's not a fit for the Padres books. But if you were asked me where's he going, I don't know. Who's going to want to give up that much for Juan Soto, like we said previously already, for a guy you're not going to extend unless, well, God forbid, but still, I don't see a huge fit.
This is almost the same scenario, right? Like, yes, I do think he's going to be traded, which means you don't get the qualifying offer, but I just can't see teams giving up that much to get 1 year of him.
Right.
I just don't see that happening.
They're not going to get the type of deal that the Padres gave up.
Certainly not. No.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Yankees need a bat. They would really use a lefty bat for that short porch. Juan Soto, I think, would thrive in Yankee Stadium.
Hearing that his contract this year is just way too steep for them to take on for a 1-year deal.
Yeah. So, is it possible? From what I've heard, the Padres have to trade him. When I say have to, they really need to get rid of some money off the books, and Juan Soto's that fit. But the price, from what we hear, the price they're asking sounds like you're getting The Padres have played their cards, and everyone's like, we know what you need to do. We're not going to pay the prices you want.
And I think that's the thing, right? Is I think everyone's calling AJ Preller's bluff. I do think there's some teams out there that would need him and would legitimately trade for him. But I think this is going to play out. Like I'm just looking at this, and I think it's going to play out throughout the season. I think he might be trade deadline type thing, and AJ Preller's just like, well, whatever. I'll take dollars of donuts at this point. Like, I don't see them getting much in return.
Well, according to Ken Rosenthal in The Athletic, he said Juan Soto is almost certain to be traded, both to ease the Padres' payroll burden and to get them the pitching they desperately need. The question is not whether he'll be traded. The question is which team will acquire him. So I think he goes, but I think it's probably also after Ohtani signs, right? Because
yes.
And
say you are the Cubs and you don't get Ohtani, there's your lefty bat. And if you don't get Bellinger, right?
Yep.
So it's like
same thing for the Dodgers,
right? Maybe do you think the Dodgers and the Padres though?
No.
Yeah, I do, because
the
Dodgers have the arms that the Padres desperately need. And
but are
Soto
you the Dodgers giving your rival arms for the future, or is it a 3-teamer?
Oh, there's that. Look at the Rays would Juan Soto be a sneaky pick there.
Soto goes somewhere, and they give their better prospects to the White Sox, and Cease goes back to the Padres.
Write it down right here, folks. You heard it right here on Barrels and Barrels.
That's an interesting tick. I kind of like,
right?
like that.
You go 3-teamer. So then the White Sox, they don't necessarily need a Soto, but the team that gets Soto is giving up their better prospects to the White Sox. And then the White Sox in turn are giving the Padres maybe a prospect and Dylan Cease to San Diego. Cease doesn't cost as much as Soto does. There's the pitching they need.
The Tampa Bay Rays, they were how close to first place all year? First place.
They led half the year, and then the Baltimore Orioles in June, I think, overtook them, and they were 2 games back all the way until the final week of the year. But they're also trading Glasnow, so
I am not entirely sure where their innings are going to come from. So I think if they trade for anything, they need like number 2, number 3 arms somewhere. I have no idea who's going to start for them.
Well, any other thoughts on players? Bichette, is that a thing? You think it's a thing?
I'm not sure if that's a thing.
Yeah,
that would be the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays moving Bichette, they're moving Guerrero Jr. too.
Yeah, assuming Ohtani signs outside of the Angels somewhere else, like I have to assume that they will shop Trout, right? Like, why would you keep him at that point in time? Like, that has to be somebody that we talk about in realistic trade potential, right? Like, am I crazy there?
No, I think that's probably a podcast. The next podcast is
Mike Trout only.
It could be a Mike Trout only podcast, but once we get through the winter meetings in a week from today, we're going to have a lot of clarity on where things are going, and I think it's going to happen fast. I think by this time next week, Tuesday, Ohtani's somewhere. I think we already have a trade, and I think we see Snell gone, and also Yamamoto's going to be a much more clear picture on where he's going, or he may already have a decision because he's also going to be at the winter meetings meeting with teams in person as well. You figure out, okay, where's Trout going? Is he staying? Is he going? What are they thinking out there? So I think in a week we have that conversation, or in a week and a half when we reconvene to see what's left or what the nuggets from the meetings that are left over are.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun week.
So that has been this episode of Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast, baseball portion. You can find us on YouTube right here at Barrels and Barrels Pod. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button below if you haven't done so already. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, as well as TikTok, but also that is all at Barrels and Barrels Pod on Twitter, or now X, but formerly Twitter, at Barrels and Barrels. I am Brandon. That is Michael and Wes. Any other notes, gentlemen, before we sign off?
No, sir.
Not
Winter
it.
meetings. Let's go, baby.
Let's go. Stove's heating up.
Hot Stove is heating up, and it'll be on full blast about a week from today. Thank you for listening. Michael Burnes, take us away.
Let's go.
Goodbye.